Talking It Out. I'm Jonathan Geffner, and my special guest today is Mikael Einarsson. He is a master hat maker who lives in Sweden. Mikael handcrafts very beautiful custom-designed hats, particularly fedoras of all styles, of which I am the proud owner of several of them. Welcome, Mikael, to Talking It Out.
Thank you, Jonathan. I'm happy to be here.
I'd mentioned that I'm the proud owner of several. I discovered you on the internet a couple of years ago and was very excited to find them. I was searching for just these type of fedoras, which you wound up crafting several of them for me. But before we get to my part of the story, tell us a little bit about your story. When, how, and why did you become a hat maker?
Wow. Okay. I'm not really used to talking about myself and my story too much, but let's try.
Sure, and you're probably not used to it in English also.
That's true.
But your English sounds very good, so
thank you.
Shouldn't be much of a problem.
Thank you very much. Well, I think my story started as a child, as a kid. I think everyone has a dream growing up of what they want to do and want to achieve and so on. And the hat journey started even before I knew it, actually. It started with watching Indiana Jones as a child. I think it was just back in 1989, 1990, when this movie Last Crusade came out. And I'm born in 1984, so I grew up in the 90s, and I don't even remember the 80s at all. And of course, when that movie came out, I was too young to see it in the cinemas. So my father actually rented it on VHS, and we watched it together with my grandparents and so on. I couldn't understand the movie because it was in English. And I could only understand what was happening on the screen. And I kept looking at his hat all the time, and I was so fascinated by it. The story actually went together with the hat, and that's why he's famous. He's famous for having his fedora, and famous for doing things, living his life, going on a journey. And later on, that's why I figure out that's actually the meaning of having a hat with you. It's something that carries your story forward because it's with you all the time. It should be with you all the time. That's how I started thinking about hats as a kid.
How old were you at the time when you first saw your Indiana Jones movie?
So this was in 1990, must have been. So I must have been 6-7 years old. And then, of course, I started to research more about, well, actually, my brother told me, oh, there's actually 2 more movies that you haven't seen yet. And I was like, wow, I have to see that. And then later on, of course, you have the Young Indiana Jones Chronicles, which came on TV. I think that was 93, 90, well, sometime around there, actually. And that actually, just like I told you before, like having a hat actually represents you going on a journey, on a story. And that's actually what he did in the TV series. He was living out his story as a kid up to an old guy with an eye patch. I'm not sure if you've seen the series, but for me, it was
I saw 1 or 2 episodes. I haven't watched most of the series. I've seen all the famous trilogy, of course, of the Indiana Jones movies.
I mean, so my story then, fast forward, like I studied in Sweden. I grew up in Sweden. And I studied subject which has nothing to do with handcrafting, nothing to do with fashion at all. And then I went abroad. I went to Switzerland. I studied hotel management. I ended up going to China for 10 years after that.
For 10 years in your relatively brief life, because you're still a young man. So that's a long time to have spent in China. So what brought you there?
Basically, it's the adventure side in me actually came forward. So
the Indiana Jones in you, huh?
Exactly, yeah. So I was asking, like, you studied hospitality in Switzerland. You have to take, like, you study half a year, 1 semester, and then you actually go for your internship for another half a year before going back again and continuing onwards. So this internship coordinator, she asked me, where do you want to go in the world? Because you're studying hospitality, hotel management. You can actually go to London, you can go to Dubai, New York, where all the big hotels are actually. And I figured I actually want to go and see the world. So I want to go as far away as possible. And she happened to have 1 internship in Beijing, China. And I actually never heard about Beijing. I was thinking, Beijing, where's that? I know Peking, because that's what we said in Swedish.
The old word for it.
Exactly. And then I realized, yeah, okay, so that's Beijing. Wow, why not? So I went there, total cultural shock because it was totally different, and I couldn't understand a single word it was saying, and not many people spoke English. Nowadays it's different though. A lot of people speak English there, so that's pretty cool. So I actually made a very short career in hospitality, and I moved forward into luxury fashion. So I was working for brands like Coach, Prada, Louis Vuitton for a short period of time. And I ended up going to Hong Kong for my last year in Asia. And I actually think my career was sort of ending. I wasn't really feeling happy with the work I was doing there. I didn't like the constant corporate life, basically, with all the pressure of you have to sell this amount of money every month, and the constant pressure of why are you not selling so much, and what's the problem, etc. And I was in Asia when the economy was sort of having a downturn. Like the fashion world had its peak in 2013, 2014, and after that everything just went downwards, and it was difficult to perform there. And I was living in a very small place. I was living in a 100 square meter apartment in the middle of Hong Kong, and that's like an average size bathroom, or it's like a luxury bathroom perhaps. But I had everything. I had there was a bathroom, there was a kitchen, there was a place to sleep. I think I paid around $1,000 a month for rent, which is quite a lot. It's very cheap for Hong Kong.
Yes,
yeah, it's a lot of money.
I think it's the most, or for a while it was the most expensive city in the world, cost of living. It might still be, I'm not sure. Either Hong Kong or Tokyo, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I lived in a place where it was easy to commute to work. So I figured if I can easily get to work, I don't have to spend money on taxi fare and subway and so on. So it all made sense. But I was sitting in this small apartment, and I actually planned hat making already in 2016. So this was in 2016 I moved to Hong Kong, and I started to explore how do I actually make hats, because I've been thinking about hat making for a while, and I figured let's start it as a hobby and see where it goes. And so I purchased my first wooden block, which is the shape you use to make a certain style of hats. Every hat starts like a big chunk, and then you shape it afterwards. So I purchased my first block, my first couple of tools, and my first fur felt, which is the material of the hat. I was sitting on the floor of this apartment, which is all tiled floor. Basically, it was like a big bathroom. And I was shaping this hat and was thinking, like, how do I do this? I have no idea how to make hats, but I have to try. I figure out you use hot water, steam, and you just shape it. And that's what I did.
So did you go on the internet to learn how to do hat making?
Basically, yeah, I had to. So I was watching all these famous clips from Stetson and old hat making videos and so on, just to see what they did. And I actually found an old book, which was like in a PDF format. So I read this through and through, and I found out all the basics of old hat making. I think this book is from 1920s or something like this. It's about hat refurbishment. So it's more about taking care of old hats and how to make them as new. Yeah, well, once I made my first hat, which I still have, it's a black fedora with a red liner inside. And once I had this, I actually figured out, okay, so this is actually kind of fun. I kind of want to continue doing this. And I think a week later, I sent an email to my HR and my boss, and simply said, I quit. And I think just a couple of minutes later, my HR boss replied with, what? Why? And since I hadn't actually passed my probation for that work, I could actually leave after 30 days or something like this, or 2 weeks, I can't remember, which I did. So I went back home to Sweden, and I started to, I went to my parents' garage and started to make hats. And you know, like any successful company actually starts in a garage, right? Just like Apple, etc. And
you're following in very famous footsteps there, that process.
Yeah, exactly. And
also garage bands too. A lot of famous musicians, rock stars started in the garage too.
That's true. And I actually stayed in that garage for quite some time, and then never really got out of it. And then I moved to a couple of different places. I got my own apartment, and I moved to a bigger place and a bigger place. And today I have a whole building just for hat making, which I'm trying to prepare for summer. And summer is already here.
But even in Sweden, I thought your summers come late there. You have short summers, don't you?
It depends on where you are. I'm in the south. So south is really 4 seasons, clear 4 seasons, while in the north you have the long cold winters, etc.
Right.
So I'm lucky. I started to just exploring more and more, how do I actually make hats? I was actually not thinking of it as a business, because I thought my career in Asia was finished and I had to like recuperate, just get back home, take some time off and think things through.
That's after 10 years in China. Did I hear you correctly?
Yeah. Yes.
Long time.
Correct.
Did you learn Chinese in the meantime over that period at all?
Yeah. I speak fluently. I
Oh,
can't
fluently.
read and write.
Oh.
Yeah.
我会说一点普通话和
你会。
广东话. I never knew it very well, but
Okay.
you know, I forgot most of what I learned. I lived in Hong Kong for 2 years, so that's
okay.
Yeah, we have that in common. But let's get back to your story.
Right. So yeah, my first 6 to 9 months at home was really nerve-wracking, because I was starting to think, okay, let's make this into a business somehow. How can I start to make and sell hats to the world, and why do I actually want to do it? I didn't think about Indiana Jones yet. That came actually later, because before that I was just thinking about, let's just make the basic hat shape, hat style, and learn how to make a sweatband and put all the components together and so on.
So you were not inspired at the outset of your hat making efforts by fedoras or Indiana Jones in particular. It was just a general desire to try making hats.
Exactly. So I was actually looking at the old style bowler hats, the derby hats. The ones which are actually a little bit more, they're taller than the British ones.
Right. Maybe top hats also.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I wanted to do. But then I figured that's a little bit more complicated than you building felt hats, actually. So I figured just focus on the film noir style fedoras and so on, and see where it takes me. So I didn't actually sell a single hat until after 9 months. At the time, I was actually on Etsy.com, selling hats and trying to put out everything that I made and so on.
But it took a while to make that first sale, huh? Were you getting nervous about it, and thinking like, "Uh-oh, this isn't going to work"?
Yeah, I was really nervous, because if you're back home, you don't have any work, no income, then you're really thinking like, what am I actually doing? So, but yeah, actually, there's a gentleman in the United Kingdom who was looking for a Bogart fedora. But at the time, I didn't know how to make those, and he was actually very, very open, very friendly, and he was telling me exactly how he wanted the hat to be. So just make me an open crown this tall and the brim width this wide. Use these felt color and this ribbon, and I'll be happy. And I was equally happy. So I made that for him. I sent it, and he actually reshaped the hat, sent me a photo, and it was just amazing. So that was my first sale ever. I don't think I returned to the Bogart until 2 or 3 years later after that.
What kind of hats were you making after that? At what point did you specialize in fedoras, first of all? Was it because you said at first you weren't even thinking of specializing in fedoras, but you became a fedora specialist at what point?
I've been jumping back and forward, because I really love bowler hats as well. I love the old styles. So I was trying to remake those again, and then I jumped back into fedoras. So I think just within the first year, I was really focusing on regular fedoras, and I tried to make more Homburgs as well, the ones which has more of a curl to the side, etc., or all the way around. But yeah, I kept going back to just simply making fedoras over and over, and I kept actually creating some styles which I named after Viking names. So I used the Ragnar, I used the Harald, I used Ivar, etc.
So those are your names. Obviously, I've seen those various names that you give the styles. So that's not like traditional fedora names necessarily.
No, not at all. Actually, my father is from Iceland, so that's why I used sort of a Viking history to inspire the hat making. But yeah,
your Indiana Jones connection. You were saying was that sort of in retrospect it inspired you, because it didn't first catapult you into hat making, right? But then at what point did that become a factor in your influence?
So during this initial 2 years, a lot of people were asking me to make them Indiana Jones hats. And I wasn't really sure how to make it back then, even though it's a very, very simple hat to make. What makes the Indiana Jones hat complicated is that it's different in every scene of the movie. like the Raiders of the Lost Ark, it's different all the time, and even in the other movies, it keeps on changing, etc. And that's mainly because they have several hats for the movie. They don't only have one hat.
So you would be more aware of that than the average viewer, because that's your specialty, or already was, right? So it's funny how, whatever one's specialty is, that's what you see and catch. So that it's actually in essence a continuity mistakes, right? That they had too many variances between the look of the hats.
Exactly, yeah. And also because of the weather, you know, he's in hot weather, he's in the cold weather, and each time he keeps touching the felt, and that's how it keeps on changing and so on.
So that will be a justification for some of the changes. If it changed because of circumstance and weather, it could theoretically be the same hat, but in some cases it just probably looked too apparently different that didn't sound right. It's not the same hat.
Exactly. Right. Going back to your question, actually, because which goes back to my childhood, is why did I get so inspired by Indiana Jones, and I keep on making those hats? And it's mainly because I was looking at the connection between Indiana Jones as a person and why he was wearing the hat. It was really linked to his behavior. So the hat somehow shaped his behavior, or vice versa. You know, the hat was shaped by his behavior. That's probably more correct. He was having a sort of a principle of life. Like, he felt that many things belonged in a museum and the artifacts should be taken care of. And he was sort of helping out the little person, or how to say, not the powerful person. He was helping people through his journey, and it really reflected on him as a person. He was fighting evil, and he was helping for the good. And I think if you look back at the 1930s or 20s, which is the time when fedoras were just amazing, and it's also linked to how our behavior as people were back then. We had more respect for one another, and a lot of more courtesy. Like, people would hold open the doors for someone before walking in there themselves. And it's this kind of behavior that I wanted to reflect back into the hats. And if you look at today's fashion world, it's more about, look at me, I have this and you can't afford it, and that makes me much better, right? And then these items that people buy nowadays, they become obsolete because it's out of fashion. Sometimes even people see relationships like this, which is not really good. But
there's a connection, right? Social contagion of the way people look at life in general, and our culture in general, and Western society in general, maybe Eastern society too, but I know certainly in Western that we have that throwaway society kind of thing, and disposable society, and including relationships are thought of as disposable much more than they used to be.
Right. And Indiana Jones did not throw away his hat. He kept on the same hat throughout his journey, and that's what I want people to do. I mean, that's sort of my business. I want you to buy a hat. I don't really necessarily want you to buy 10 hats, because I want you to keep that hat for the rest of your life, and it's part of your story. I mean, imagine walking down the street and you see a person with a very nice old hat which has been worn. It's a little bit scuffed and dirty, and wouldn't you want to ask that person, where have you been in your life?
The history, it's sort of has a personality of its own. One imagines one can imbue it with the sense of its own life, the hat's own life, right?
Yeah, exactly.
This brings to mind what you're talking about, a lot of nostalgic feelings, and I'm a very nostalgic person, and very attracted in particular for a long time to noir, the film noir, the whole genre, but also the sensibilities of that era too. It's very appealing to me, those aspects of it. Of course, there are pros and cons of every era, and that's also a kind of dichotomy that often strikes me when I'm feeling particularly nostalgic. Sometimes I remind myself, well, it wasn't all fun and games. I mean, like, we're talking about the Indiana Jones fighting evil. Of course, it starts off with the onset with a prequel of the coming to World War II, and the Nazis, and so I mean, all that was going on, some of the most horrible things in human history. At the same time, there was another side to it, like society also had this kind of gentility and sense of decorum and manners, which was a lovely thing, a lovely way to live. So, but that's the part, of course, that we are nostalgic about that
Right.
aspect of it.
Yeah.
Fedoras in particular, I think Indiana Jones brought back a little bit. Fedoras came back into style a bit during his time, but I think not very widely. I saw a little bit, here and there, people started wearing the particularly the Indiana Jones fedoras, but
Yeah.
I didn't catch on too much in too widespread in society. Now a bit more. I don't really pay attention to fashion much per se, but of course I love fedoras. Maybe this is a time to just briefly tell our viewers my part of the story here, how I met you virtually, and now actually, well, it's still virtual, but talking face to face actually for the first time. But
Right.
I communicated with you a number of times because I ordered several. I wound up ordering several fedoras from you because, as a ventriloquist, my main characters have been for a couple of decades at least, Trillo and Suede, the detective duo of the ventriloquist detective and his wooden partner. Those are Trillo and Suede. So I've done a couple of short films. I did a web series, 2 seasons within the past few years, and the most recent thing recently was the short film Casanoir, all featuring Trillo and Suede, and they wear fedoras. I do a lot of videos as well, all kinds of short videos. I mean, I've done hundreds or thousands of them. I do on YouTube and TikTok with these characters, other characters too, but in particular Trillo and Suede. And there, I got into the habit of always wearing fedoras. I don't care indoors or outdoors. Just I want that to be. I established that as part of the look of the fedoras. And what brought me to you was that I was never happy with the fedoras that I found online, just commercially made fedoras. I had a few different ones that I used over the time for both my partner and me when I'm in character as Trillo and I have Suede, my puppet partner. So, when we wore fedoras, I bought several different ones that looked sort of like what I wanted, but never really. What I really wanted was the Bogart type of fedora. He was quintessential detective from the noir era, and I had to look just like what he was wearing. I couldn't find it online anybody who makes them look really quite like that. But then on one search, finally, a couple of years ago, I came across your website. And I started looking and said, you even had one called the Bogart fedora. I was thinking, that's it. That's what I'm looking for. Finally, so I talked to you. I ordered my first 2. And then I ordered a couple more. I ordered a second for my second Suede character because I have a backup Suede puppet whose head is a different size. So I need another one that fits his head. So I wound up getting those 3, 1 for me and 2 for my Suedes. And then I was so happy that, of course, I never wore the other fedoras after that. That became my fedora. But then I bought also, just for myself, the others were brown, and this one I have this lovely color, which I don't know what to call it. It's a brown. I don't know how well it doesn't come through on the screen probably. It's embarrassing. I got to clean this. I got discarded. Yeah, it was a greenish, bluish, something like that. What do you call
Yeah,
this?
it's the emerald gray.
Emerald gray, yeah. But
Yeah.
I'm afraid this is very untrue the way it looks on the screen here. Maybe because my light here is bad. I have to find a different light that's better, too bluish or something. But whatever. But I wear this sometimes just for fun. This one, I wish I could wear it now during the interview. I was saying I wanted to wear it, but it doesn't fit on my headphones. Yeah, and here's the my brown one that I wear most of the time because we match with my Suede partner. So I've been thrilled with them, and my only regret was I didn't find you earlier, especially before the Casanoir, for the web series too. But then certainly Casanoir, because that short film is a parody of Casablanca, the famous 1942 iconic classic film starring Humphrey Bogart in the lead role. So, that would have been so cool if I could have had this one. So I wear different fedoras, which are not nearly as good, but at least I had some kind of fedora. So that's my story to our viewers and what brought me into contact with you. The name Hufvud, where does that come from?
Hufvud, it's pronounced.
Hufvud.
Yeah, in Swedish that means head, your head. And the spelling of it is an obsolete form. It has an F in the middle, and that's not how we use it nowadays. Nowadays it's HUVVUD. Hufvud, and that's Hufvud. And I use the
Hufvud,
old
okay.
spelling, yeah.
And why did you choose the old spelling?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well,
Maybe
I
just
figured out,
nostalgia? Part of because it's
I
old,
think
isn't it?
so, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I want to make old style hats, and why not use old style spelling of something? So actually, the company name is Hufvud of Harald, which means the head of Harald.
And who is that?
Technically, he's the first king of Norway.
Oh.
My grandfather was actually doing a lot of ancestry research, and he went all the way back in the Viking stories, and he actually found out that we are related to the first king of Norway. I think he had a bastard daughter which fled to Iceland, and then she became our relatives, basically. So yeah,
This
but
is
then
my
again,
brush with royalty now, talking with
exactly.
you.
Yeah. Well, then again, everyone in Iceland is related to him anyway, so it's nothing special. Yeah.
Okay, well, we won't tell our viewers that.
No, yeah.
Now you have various styles of fedoras, and I'll put up some pictures for people to be seeing during our interview after we record this, and before I upload it. I want to have some images for people to see these different styles. And how many different styles do you have? Do you ever count them?
Wow, I keep on changing all the time, but I think I have 10 main styles, which I don't think I have all of them on the site at the moment, because I keep taking them down and changing them to update the way I make them a little bit. I have the Ragnar fedora, which I've probably changed 10 times over the years.
Modifications?
Yeah, because I changed the way I make them, not only the process, but also materials, etc. And then I take the opportunity just to update a little bit. But yeah, I have more styles coming up, and I keep on developing.
Where do you find most of your customers come from? I mean, I'm sure they're all over the world, but do you have a main base? Is it like more Americans or Brits or just Europeans or other people?
Actually, it's mostly American. I do have a couple of regular customers in Europe, and I'm getting more and more customers from Europe actually at the moment. But America has always been the largest segment actually, and it's kind of interesting because my inspiration came from America anyway, and watching
Makes sense.
and watching other famous hat makers make their hats, and it's an honor to be making hats for USA. So that's cool.
Yeah. Yes. Well, certainly because film noir is an American genre. And even though the fedora, I believe, was Italian originally, right? It was I don't know who made the first fedora, but I think it was an Italian style. The name sounds Italian, right?
Yeah.
But the genre of film noir that made fedoras iconic is an American film genre. First,
right,
literature, and then film genre. You do this full time now, I gather, yes?
I've done this full time since 2017. So yeah.
Oh, it's for a number of years already.
Yeah.
Are you also nostalgic for other vintage things? I don't know if you're a collector or of anything like, or just interested in old posters and furniture and artwork and stuff like that, or is it mainly just the fedoras is the main thing that you're nostalgic about?
Well, I love everything from that era actually. I grew up in a home where my mother had a lot of items from her grandparents, etc., like a lot of furniture, old clothing, and so on. So I've always been exposed to it. I've grown up learning how old things used to look like and function, and the different materials and so on. I have a photo of my grandfather's Swedish side, my mother's side, sorry. Well, I have a Swedish side and Icelandic side, of course. I have a photo of him wearing a fedora, and I don't actually have that fedora at the moment because I think my grandmother threw it away at some point.
That's a shame.
It is a shame, yeah, because I would love to have had it. And I never actually met him. He died, I think, 15 years before I was born. So it was a little bit sad not to have met him and talk about hats, etc. It would be fun. But yeah, I mean, I don't really collect things more than hats at the moment. I mean, I've learned hat making from old hats. At the beginning, I was buying a lot of old hats from eBay. I was buying hats which were broken actually, because I figured, okay, I can actually take them apart, and I wouldn't be destroying anything. I would actually be saving it because I want to learn how it works. And I still keep these hats, and I try to refurbish them and give them new life.
Do you want to make craft other kinds of hats? Also, I mean, are you happy focusing on fedoras, or do you plan to or want to create other kinds of hats as well?
At the moment, I'm actually developing my skills and the studio to be able to make top hats and bowler hats, actually.
Oh, right. I know you said you
Yeah,
did some of those, but I was
yeah.
wondering if you're, actively or planning to actually go back into that or more into that.
No, yeah, it's already in the making. It's I have a lot of tools coming which will help me to make these hats. And the University of Sweden actually use these top hats for their doctorates. When they graduate, they're supposed to wear a hat
Oh,
once, and then they put it back on the shelf and never wear it. But they actually want me to start making them for them, because the ones who make them in Sweden at the moment, they're getting quite old, and they probably won't work with hats for much longer. So I'm happy to be able to do it in the future. That's pretty cool.
I'll have to talk with you about ordering a top hat for
Yeah.
my character Ezra, one of my ventriloquist puppets who
Ah.
was inspired by Harpo Marx. And are you familiar with the Marx Brothers?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and Harpo, you would in some of those movies he wore a top hat, black
Yeah.
top hat, right? With
Yeah.
like rags, like you're
Yeah.
dressed in rags, but always a top hat.
Oh, that's cool.
So yeah, yeah, that would be really cool. So I
Yeah.
think I'm eager to order a couple more fedoras too. The probably stick with Bogart style, but maybe a couple other colors too, just for fun,
It
because
is a
they're
nice
such
style.
great hats. Yeah. So for everyone out there, you'll see the link right under here for Michael's website, so you can check out all those fedoras and order one to start with of your choice. You can always consult with him any questions you have. And I must say also that these fedoras that you craft are very reasonably priced for the quality of work that you do. I mean, they're not cheap because they can't be cheap, but they're less than I thought they would be because of such a high quality of craftsmanship. So make sure to put in your order soon before Michael wises up and raises those prices. So magic wand time, if you could do anything you imagine as far as hat making for some kind of grand project, what would you like to do? Like maybe a movie that would be a neo-noir movie where everybody's wearing fedoras again and you're the hat maker for the whole thing, or maybe a stage production where it's very fedora heavy, or I don't know, anything else. Can you think of something, or maybe just for some kind of exhibit? Is it something that would particularly inspire you to maybe like a Netflix series with, what do they call that, time-centered period piece rather, and a lot of fedoras? Would you like to be the hat maker for the series or something like that? Anything like that come to mind that you would love to do in particular?
Not necessarily. I mean, I just want to bring back the styles from the past. I mean, there are so many styles which you can find in old hat catalogs from the 1920s and onwards, and I basically just want to bring them back by making them. And I'm happy to make a hat for anyone in any style, as long as I have the ability to make them and the skill to make them, of course. I haven't actually seen my hats on the screen yet, but that would be actually an honor to have a hat shown to the world like that. So, yeah.
I was projecting my fantasy onto you, wondering if you felt likewise, because that's my not just fantasy. I'm trying to make it a reality of shooting a feature film of Trillo and Suede with those characters, in which it would be fedora heavy, like period piece. So we'd have, in addition to Trillo and Suede, at least several other characters would be wearing fedoras. So if I can, right now I'm trying to line up the funding for my feature film While the Village Sleeps, and if I manage to do that, then I'll be certainly talking with you about creating a few more fedoras for me for my project. So
Happy to help you.
yeah, and for all of you viewers out there, if you're interested, this strikes your fancy or curiosity, you can always contact me. If you might want to be a potential investor in this film, become a part of neo-noir history and of Hufvud hat making history. by helping to create this feature film that I'm in the process of pre-production. Anyway, Mikael, it's been a pleasure talking with you here today. Very
Thank you.
fascinating.
A real
and
pleasure. Yeah.
It's quite a unique skill that you have. Not too many, high quality hat makers that I'm aware of these days, and certainly not specializing in fedoras. I mean, anyone who wants the best quality fedora imaginable must talk to Mikael very soon and order yours. If you enjoyed this interview, viewers out there, and why would you not, then you should subscribe to this channel, the Trillo Suede channel, where this is being uploaded, if you didn't already, and also always hit that notification bell so you'll be notified of new uploads. You won't miss anything. Here is where you can see Casanoir, which I alluded to, which I mentioned, my most recent Trillo Suede short film, as well as the Trillo Suede web series, and hundreds of other little videos of all kinds that I post there with my puppet partners. And some of my piano playing videos as well is another thing I do on the side. Anyway, that's all there for you to enjoy right here on the Trillo Suede YouTube channel. Thanks again, Mikael, for spending this time with me.
Thank you.
And to all of you out there, see you soon.